Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently we are we are in Second Chronicles chapter 35. We're kind of coming down to the closing chapters of this book. What is interesting about the closing of this book, and we will get to this in the next chapter, is that it unfolds. It does something here that is a little different than the other books, Samuel, Kings, is that it leapfrogs 70 years to the Babylonian exile. More on that, however, in the next chapter. This chapter, of course, is the story of Josiah. And Josiah, this is the last generation of good kings, one. The last generation of a righteous generation, meaning, as we're going to see here, they will celebrate the they will celebrate the Passover. Josiah led the people in such a revival. We call them revivals. This revival of righteousness, a turning towards the Lord. That's usually the ideal of when you see revivals in churches and stuff like that. They really don't do it, but okay, I digress. And I do say that as a form of kind of what these revival in churches are supposed to do, as opposed to when you see these kind of revivals here with the likes of, like, say, Josiah, Hezekiah, okay, the time during Elijah's reign, how the hearts of the people turn towards the Lord. And their actions displayed that. So first we saw Josiah clearing out all pagan worship practices and sins. And as I often say, because a lot of times these things are too graphic to really kind of go into details, but when you talk about the level of the paganism that was going on, there was always gross sexual perversion, extreme violence, and just crazy practices like passing your son to the fire. In other words, offering them live children in the fire, putting them on glowing arms. It's brutal to see your child literally burn to death by offering them to the god Moloch. So this was the gross. So this is what you would have with paganism. So his first thing was to clean the land of paganism, then to establish temple worship, the worship of the true God. In Josiah's case, by this time, a lot of the sin was that they would bring these practices into the house of God. And as I said, the closest that I could probably get to would be like have your spouse having an affair, but in your very bedroom. That analogy doesn't even come close, but I think you understand where I'm going with it. The blasphemy with it. So the established worship. And then we're going to see in this chapter how they will establish the practice then of living righteous, obeying the law of Moses as it was given. All right, so chapter 35, verse 1 says, Josiah observed the Lord's Passover and slaughtered the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the first month. Now, kind of interesting that this was actually now, I think, done as it was. I want to say during Hezekiah time that they did practice this, but it wasn't on this particular day. And there were some reasons why they did that. People could not purify themselves in time, and there was a couple other things here. But notice Josiah did it on the day. This is going to be the last time that such a celebration, the observance of the Passover, and you go all the way back, remember, to Israel, when they came, the very night that they came out of Egypt, that God told them to slaughter a Passover lamb. They were to eat the lamb. They were to take the blood and paint the blood over the doorpost. And that very night, Israel's firstborn was killed. And then they went out the next day. So that Passover, that's why that Passover is very important, to commemorate God breaking the neck, breaking the feet, or the yoke off of the necks of people, the feet off of the necks, the slavery. Okay, they were to remember this. The Passover was, now always remember, this is what God has done for you. Verse 2 says, he appointed the priests to their responsibilities and encouraged them to serve in the Lord's temple. He said to the Levites who taught all of Israel the holy things of the Lord. Now, let me go back. Look at this again here. He said to the Levites who taught all of Israel the holy things of the Lord. So another thing about how when a nation is going to be righteous, when a nation is going to prosper spiritually and naturally, is that, again, remember we said first, you see them putting away their sinful acts. 2, the establishment of worship. But notice this, they are taught. Here, they take the time to teach. And if I just want to say one thing about many churches, that what the heck are you teaching? And oftentimes what they're not teaching is the entire counsel of God, the scriptures themselves. And shame on you pastors for doing that. They think that their theology is better. And I would challenge you this. If your theology was so good, how do you measure that with the people? How are your people spiritually growing? The people, I'm saying. Okay, so verse 3 again, he said to the Levites who taught all of Israel the holy things of the Lord, put the holy ark in the temple built by Solomon, the son of David of Israel. Since you do not have to carry it on your shoulders, now serve Yahweh your God and his people Israel. Now, kind of quick note, the ark is still around at this time. I think after, I don't know if we're going to see this ark after this period of time, meaning before the Babylonian conquer. Verse 4, organize your ancestral house by your divisions according to the written instruction of David, David, king of Israel, and that of his son Solomon. Serve in the holy places by the divisions of the ancestral house for your brothers and lay people, and distribute in the distribution of the tribal household of the Levites. So this is instructions to the priests, how they are to serve. Notice they are diligent to, again, serve this way. We haven't seen a generation like this since the time of Solomon, since the time of David, since the time of Joshua, and you can say since the time of Moses. Verse 6, slaughter the Passover lamb, consecrate yourselves, and make preparations for your brothers to carry the word of the Lord through Moses. Then Josiah donated 30,000 sheep, lambs, and young goats, plus 3,000 bulls from his own possessions. Now you can see how wealthy kings could be. 30,000 sheep, that's 3,000 bulls. Okay. This is for the sacrifice, for the Passover sacrifices for all the lay people were present. Now again, the lay people were common people. They were, the difference in, we use this terminology today, lay people versus clergy. Okay. Verse 8, his officials also, now I say that because the lay people were also following the practices, the ordinances of the law. Verse 8, his officials also donated willingly for the people, the priests, and the Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, Jehaniel, uh, um, Jehiel, chief officials of God's temple, gave 2,600 Passover sacrifices and 300 bulls for the priests. Conaniah and his brothers Shimei and Nathaniel and Hashabiah, Geo, and Josabad, officers of the Levites, donated 5,000 Passover sacrifice for the Levites plus 5,000 bulls. Again, forgive the butchering of the Hebrew pronunciations here, the names. So the service was established. The priest stood at the post of the Levites and their divisions according to the king's command. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb, and while the Levites were skinning the animals, the priests sprinkled the blood they had been given. Now again, notice we haven't kind of seen this before, but remember I said that there is a lot of blood being shed here. And notice it said that they're skinning. So that's why the priest work was not something that they kind of sat on, designated high, lofty areas. There was work in being a priest. Notice they're skinning all of these animals, disposing of the blood properly. You had to do something with the blood. Okay. And think about this, the skin, all that kind of stuff. So this was the labor of the priest. That's why it was an entire tribe that was devoted to the priest, because just 3 or 4 just couldn't do all this work. Verse 12, they removed the burnt offering so that they might be given to the divisions of the ancestral house of the lay people to offer the Lord according to what is written in the book of Moses. They did the same with the bulls. They roasted the Passover lamb with fire according to regulations. They boiled the holy sacrifice in pots, kettles, and bowls, and they quickly brought them to the lay people. Afterwards, they made preparations for themselves and for the priests, since the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were busy offering up burnt offerings and fat until night. So the Levites made preparation for themselves and for the priests, the descendants of Aaron. Now, there is a difference between when you say the Levites, and the priests. Typically, the priests were the sons of Levites, the sons of Aaron, because the sons of Aaron were the ones who did the offering up. The sons of Aaron were also the high priests, the ones who would go into the holies of holies and make the yearly sacrifices. The Levites were also of the descendants. Aaron was a descendant of Levi, but they were also priests, and of course, as we see here, carrying out the strenuous duties of temple worship, preparing these bulls and sheep, the killing, the blood, all of that. The Levites did that. The candle, the incense burning, the gatekeeping, the care of the temple. These are all the Levites. Okay. Verse 15. The singers, the descendants of Asaph, were at their stations according to the command of David. Asaph, Herman, and Jeduthun, the king's seer. Okay, that would be a prophet, by the way. Also, the gatekeepers were at each gate. None of them left their task because the Levite brothers had made preparations for them. So all the service of the Lord was established that day for observing the Passover and for offering burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord, according to the command of King Josiah. The Israelites who were present in Judah also observed the Passover at that time and the festivals of unleavened bread for 7 days. No Passover had been observed like it in Israel since the days of Samuel the prophet. Now you see how far back he's going, nearly 500 years, okay? Nearly 500 years. None of the kings of Israel had observed a Passover like that Josiah observed with the priests, the Levites, and all the Israelites who were present in Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, his Passover was observed. And again, this would be one of the last Passovers that they would observe in this fashion, unfortunately. Verse 20, after all of this, now this is sad because Josiah, notice how he was a good king. And as we will see that, and I pray, by the way, for this kind of, for God's mercy, that I don't make these kind of decisions. Because sometimes in the flash, in the heat of the moment, you make a dumb decision. After all the work that Josiah had done, had turned the people away from their wickedness. It said after this, that Josiah had prepared for the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, marched up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to confront him. Now, why did Josiah go out? We don't know. Bad decision, though. But Necho sent a messenger to him saying, what is the issue between you and me, king of Judah? I have not come against you today, but I'm fighting another dynasty. God told me to hurry. Stop opposing God who was with me. Don't make him destroy you. Now, Josiah probably could have consulted, remember, his seer, but for some reason he got it in his mind that he was going to go out and he was going to confront Egypt. Again, why? We just don't know. He said, but Josiah did not turn away from him. Instead, in order to fight with him, he disguised himself. He did not listen to Necho's word from the mouth of God, but went to the valley of Megiddo to fight. And this is a good example right here that sometimes when we do foolish things, that even, think about this, even when we do the foolish things, that if we go against God's word, sometimes that can be foolish in itself. And it can have grave consequences. Verse 23, the archers shot King Josiah, and he said to his servants, take me away, for I am severely wounded. So his servants took him out of the war chariot, carried him in his second chariot, and brought him to Jerusalem. Then he died, and they buried him in the tomb of his father. All of Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. And then Jeremiah chanted a dirge over Josiah, and all of the singing men and the singing women still speak of Josiah in their dirges, a sad song, dirges. To this very day, they established them as a statute for Israel, and indeed they are written in the dirges, or the song, sad songs, the song. It says, the rest of the events of Josiah's reign, along with his deeds of faithful love, according to what it is written in the law of the Lord, his words from beginning to end are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Now, a very sad ending to a very good king, Josiah. Very sad. I want to do this. I was going to wait to the next thing, but I want to mention this here right now. I want you to look at verse 25, and it says Jeremiah chanted a dirge over Josiah. Now, Jeremiah the prophet, which the book that we have of Jeremiah, okay, the book that we have, the writing Jeremiah. Remember I said that Josiah, when we come to his death, now we're just about 20 to 25 years from the fall of Jerusalem. Now what is interesting, of course, now we see that Jeremiah the prophet is on the scene. And Jeremiah the prophet, his prophecy, his ministry, begins around, again, 20, 25 years before the fall, and he goes through the entire desolation, destruction of Jerusalem, the temple, and so Jeremiah is the one who kind of goes through that period of time. All right, guys, Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next study.